There we go. All right, recording now. All right. Hello, happy Tuesday, everybody. This is Charles T. from Blackstone Cybersecurity.
And this is Jim Gibson from Blackstone Cybersecurity and Nova Voice and Data Systems.
Yeah, and we're today presenting you a special webinar on the Equifax hack that happened recently. And we're going to talk about just kind of how it happened, why it happened, and what you can do to protect yourself.
Yeah, and this hack is uniquely different than all the other hacks that you need to be aware of.
Yeah, so we'll go into it. First off, I want to talk a little bit about us and who we are. We are Blackstone Cybersecurity. We're cybersecurity consultants.
And also, we're Nova Voice and Data Systems, been in business for 28 years, 29 years, I think, here in another month. And we actually have a footprint that spans the United States, all 50 states, and we have over 6,000 installations in the United States. And at the same time, we started Blackstone Cybersecurity.
Yeah, and we cover like a lot of different disciplines in the area of cybersecurity. So, like, first off, I want to talk to you, Jim. Like, you just have this major certificate that you completed recently.
Yeah, and I started in cybersecurity back in the 80s when I was with the government, Marine Corps. And of course, they didn't call it cybersecurity back then. They called it communication security, and I worked in a secure facility, top secret facility. And that we had crypto gear and we had everything else. And you know what's amazing, even though I've been doing this for 38 years in IT, that was my start, but really the principles are the same. Of course, now we're dealing with cyber, we're dealing with hackers that are pretty talented and a lot of software and all, but the principles of cybersecurity are actually the same as communication security. A lot of them, not all of them, but the principles are still there.
Yeah, and like with your CISSP, which is the certification you have, like it's like a little bit different than your typical like Cisco certification, right? Tell me about that.
Well, absolutely. First of all, you have to prove you have 5 years cybersecurity, and there's no other certification that requires that. You have to have 5 years active cybersecurity daily on a daily basis. You have to pass an exam that's pretty extensive. Some of the exam books were up to 1,000 pages. The exam itself is a 6-hour exam.
Wow.
And that's very pricey. And then you have to have other people in the cybersecurity industry vouch for the fact that you have the experience. They check your background. You cannot have any felonies in your background. And that's all before they'll issue. Even if you pass the exam, if you can't get someone to certify who's already has that certification, if you can't get someone to certify for you, or they discover you have felonies, you can never get that certification. And now the thing I see a lot is, as I see in this industry, because it's really hot right now, cybersecurity is the hottest thing out there. So you run into people that last week were mowing lawns, and all of a sudden they're cybersecurity experts.
Yeah,
and I see that all the time.
See that too.
And I just remember I go to as many meetings as possible where people talk about cybersecurity. And I was listening to this one guy talk about cybersecurity, and he talked about how to set up passwords, things like that, and he was wrong. And so I questioned him, and he said, well, I went to a webinar in the afternoon, or a seminar, I'm sorry, I don't want to belittle it. He actually went to a class for an afternoon or a day, and he's selling it to his customers. Better than nothing, but he was wrong when it came to setting up passwords.
Yeah. All that is to say, we know what we're doing.
Yes.
One of the other big areas that we cover is the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, otherwise known as HIPAA. Super important. If you are a provider of like any kind of medical service and you deal with patient records, like you fall under the umbrella of HIPAA. And
yes.
It's very important. Like, what happens when you are in violation of HIPAA?
Well, when you're in violation of HIPAA, not only do you get a fine, but if it's gross negligence, you could. There's people who've been put in jail for it. So, and the fines are significant. There was a doctor, and it's online with HIPAA. There was a doctor who was doing his backups to his laptop, and he was not in encrypting the database. He went. He was on his way home with his laptop that had the backup. He was eating dinner. It came out. Someone broke the window, stole his laptop. He got a $750 million fine because of that lost data. And you are required to report it to the state, and you are required to report it to the federal government. And it's the same with what they call personally identifiable information. So most businesses have some personally identifiable information in their database, and it needs to be protected, needs to be backed up, and it needs to be encrypted.
Yeah. Now, in addition to that, we cover some of like the classical IT security issues that cover products like in the Microsoft line, Cisco networking products. Like we're very experienced in securing Microsoft Windows or a Cisco router, Cisco ASA. So like don't think that we're just focusing on these broad areas. We have some very specific technical knowledge.
Well, you can't be in business for 28 years without repeating over and over again some of these things, because this is our expertise. And we're a Microsoft dealer, and I'm a partner, Microsoft partner, and also a Cisco partner, and we're also a California licensed cabler. So we go into buildings and we cable buildings, and we've been doing that for a long time. And it's covered under a California contractor's license.
Yeah. Just a brief overview, like in the area of cybersecurity, we can go in and do assessments. We can consult you on cybersecurity. We can consult you on like managing your IT resources, planning for the future. And then like finally managing identity and access management, which is very important because like you're here to find out about Equifax and the impact of the identity data breaches. So let's go talk about that. First off, a brief history of hacks that have happened. Like in the last few years, we've had some major high-profile hacks, including LinkedIn, 2012. 117 million users had their, information, logins, passwords, compromised. Yahoo in 2013. A billion, with a B, big, billion users. 2014, Yahoo again, 500 million users. You can kind of like get like the scale of this. Like there's a lot of people who like passwords are out there, and like if you never update your password, like that's a problem. 2015 was a big hack of Target, which this time, now we're talking about credit cards, and that's huge. Like if you're a victim of the Target hack, like maybe you had to switch out your credit card, you had to do some other things to make sure that your credit was okay. 40 million. In 2016, then we had MySpace hack.
MySpace. Does anybody really use MySpace anymore?
I don't know, but apparently they got hacked.
They got hacked.
And what? 360 million. Now, that's basically logins, passwords. Those things are compromised. But still, that's a lot of users. And again, if you don't have a strong password, or if you reuse your password on multiple sites, could be a problem. But it brings us to today's topic, which is Equifax. So 143 million. And it may, look not as big as, the 1 billion for Yahoo, but this one impacts everybody in so many ways. So let's start off with talking about what is Equifax.
And I know we're going to get back to this, but this Equifax breach is far different than all the other breaches and will affect you for your lifetime. But let's talk about Equifax.
Yeah. So Equifax, simply put, is a credit reporting agency. Along with TransUnion and Experian, they're the two major credit reporting agencies in the United States. And they collect all sorts of information about you, including where you live right now, where you lived in the past, like where do you work? Are you paying your bills on time? Have you filed for bankruptcy? There's like a lot of things that like they cover and they collect your information on. And that information is used by everybody from like banks to insurers to even like your employers or prospective employers to make decisions about you. Am I going to give you a loan? What's the APR of the loan that I'm going to give you? Like what's the insurance premium that I'm going to give you?
Well, employers think also that if you pay your bills, you're basically an honest person. So if they're going to hire someone that's going to deal with orders or money or something like that, and they check your Equifax, and then they find out that that you don't pay your bills, then most likely you're not going to get the job.
Yeah. So it's a good service, right? Like it's necessary for like these companies to like make good decisions. But here's the thing: when you get hacked by a company that stores that amount of detail about your life, it creates a huge problem. I mean, you lose your password, from like a hacker has access to that. That's one thing. They might be able to get access to other sites. But the database of information that's kept by Equifax, it's got everything from social security numbers, addresses, like again, where you live currently, where you've lived in the past. They'll store your phone numbers, date of birth, even like information of your bank credit card accounts, account numbers, credit cards, like that sort of thing. And 143 million, like it's half the population of the United States. So it is likely that if you ever bought anything, if you ever had a loan on anything, if you ever worked anywhere, if you ever rented an apartment, you are affected by this hack.
Well, I was affected by this hack, and what you'll see is you can check to see if you are affected by this hack. But it not only affected me, but it's also affected my wife. And I knew something was going on because I watch very carefully my credit, and we'll talk about that a little later, to see if there's any issues that I should be aware of. And I noticed back in August that someone was probing my credit reports and were probing different areas and things like that. And I knew that they had information on me that was far beyond what an average person should have. In fact, I've been a victim of identity theft 15 years ago and again about 10 years ago. And I found out the hard way. I applied for a credit card, and I always pay my bills. I always pay them on time. A lot of times I pay them ahead of time. And so when I was denied a basic credit card, I pulled my credit history and found out that I had a bunch of charges on my past due collections and things like that amounted to about $40,000 to $60,000.
Wow.
And most of them were on the East Coast. And it's like, I don't live on the East Coast. I live in California. I never lived in North Carolina. And so I had to start to figure out how this happened. And back then, no one believed me. I would call creditors and I'd say, that's not me. I don't have an account here or there or with Sears. I never had a Sears account. And it just went on and on. No one believed me. So I had to do some research. And I started some research, and I used some protocols, some designs that I learned in the Marine Corps about how to find things. And this was really before the internet really got started. The internet was out there, but it really wasn't a way to research. And so I started doing my research using that protocol, and I pinpointed the guy. I figured out where he was. I figured out what he was doing, and in fact, I even had his address. I sent the police there. I told them, hey, this guy's using my name, and I sent the police there. There was my first mistake. Sent the police there, and the police knocked on the door, and they said, hey, are you Jim Gibson? And the guy said, sure. And they said, show us your driver's license. And sure enough, there it was, North Carolina driver's license with Jim Gibson on it. And so they called me back 2 hours later, and they said, we don't know who the real Jim Gibson is. We don't know if this guy is the real one or you're the real one. So I found out that you had to get a hold of the Secret Service when you deal with Social Security fraud, or at least you had back then. And so me and the Secret Service agent called the local police department, and the local police department, it was verified that I was the real Jim Gibson. The other guy was using my Social Security number fraudulently. And so they went out to arrest him, and he was gone. And but he continued his practice, and now at this point I got pretty good at finding people. I learned a lot in that little 2 weeks that it took me to find him. And so I found him immediately, and he was down the street from my office here in California. And so I persuaded him to come in, and I persuaded him through threats of being sued that he sign a confession. I guess that's called a confession under duress. I don't know. You lawyers could figure it out. and it was notarized, and I sent it to all the people that claimed I owed them money, and it cleared up. Also sent it to the federal government to prosecute them, and also to the local police. Um, Make a long story short, I knew exactly who he was. He realized I could find him no matter where he went in the United States, and so he never did it again. But I tell you this, that it was an experience. It took a lot of work, and there's a lot more details. And if you're interested, I will personally talk to you about how I find people, and I've done that a handful of times since then. It's tedious, but it's easy to find someone who's using your identity. Or not easy.
It's doable.
It's doable to find someone.
But what I'm hearing in this story is that it took a lot of work to
Yes,
deal
it
with
did.
it, and like you still deal with it today.
Yeah, even I look on my credit report today. I'm trying to still. I mean, they're difficult people to deal with at the credit reporting agencies. I didn't give them this information, and yet they decided they were going to collect personal information on me. And this is valuable information because if you want to borrow money to buy a house, and then you have to have a certain credit rating to be able to afford that. And the worse your credit rating, the higher the interest rates if you get it at all. And this is how that guy found me. He actually worked for a mortgage company here in California. He took my name, my social security number, moved to the East Coast, opened up some businesses and all sorts of things, and didn't pay a dime, and lived scot-free for a year or two before I figured out what was happening. So, it's a difficult process, and it takes a long time to fix. And I still have 3 or 4 birth dates on my credit reporting that I cannot get them to correct.
Wow. Yeah, so you can kind of like get the whole world of that. Like when a business like Equifax gets hacked, it's like your whole life can get turned upside down because people have information to all sorts of, things that they can use to open a business, take out loans. So, like,
Well, and you know something else too. Before we go into how Equifax got hacked,
yeah,
when I checked my credit rating after people started probing me, and I noticed there were some people probing. When I checked, I saw that someone in my name pulled a credit report on me from one of the crediting agencies. And so when I called that crediting agency up and I said, I did not pull it, my credit report. Can you give me details as to IP address? Can you give me details as to the credit card number that was used to pull that report? And the lady said, well, it was Jim Gibson. It was you. And I said, no, it wasn't me. And this is sort of the response I got last time when I tried to correct some of the problems I had and I tried to get information. People wouldn't give me the information to find the guy that was really stealing the money from that company. And I just couldn't get the credit reporting agency to give me all the details that I need. So, I know someone's probing me, and most likely they're probing you too.
yeah. So how did something like this happen? Well, oftentimes, like a big company like Equifax, they utilize a third party to handle their claims. And so that third party used a specific tool that was not up to date and it was compromised. And then through that, they were able to get access into Equifax's systems.
Yeah, and they downloaded millions and millions. And even though Equifax will say, well, you're not part of it, just assume you really are because they really don't know all that's been downloaded.
Yeah. So, look, it's May 13 of this year, 2017, is the earliest date that they know that they were hacked. And they only found out about it on July 29th. Now, when was it disclosed to the rest of us? Oof, September 7th. So there's months and months of time that had passed from when the first, breach occurred to like when we actually found out about it.
And you know something? I knew something was going on in August because I was getting probed in August. Requests were going out in my name that I did not request, so I knew something was going on.
Yeah. So, I mean, now you kind of know the nuts and bolts of it. Well, what is out there? Who has access to it? Well, at this point, pretty much anyone who has any ill intent really can get it. Like hackers that took the information will put it online. And it's not the same internet. Like I can't Google Jim Gibson's social security number and then have it come up. But what they do is they post it to something that's called the dark web, which, Jim, what is the dark web?
Well, the dark web is not something that you can access through Google. So you have to have a special browser called
Tor.
Tor. Yeah, I had a brain burp there. Tor, and it's not illegal to have Tor, and it's not illegal to look at the, they call it the deep web. So when you're doing things legal, it's called the deep web. When you're using it for illegal purposes, it's the dark web. And what happens is you go into this situation in such a way that no one can trace who you are or who the person is you're talking to. So if you're going to go into there just to fool around, be very careful. But it's impossible to trace on the dark or the deep web. So the dark web is where it usually shows up, and there's people out there that sell social security numbers, credit card numbers, things like that, all this information. And what they'll do is they'll package it together. So they'll sell 1,000 social security numbers, and someone will pay, let's say, $2,000 or $3,000 for it, and then the scammers will go out there and they'll start to try to apply to get loans, and they'll try to use your good credit to buy things. They'll get credit cards, they'll get cell phones, they'll get things like that. And then after 6 months, you'll see a bunch of collection agencies after you, and it's hard to prove that it wasn't you. So that's what happens. There's a lot of lowlife out there that are doing these things, and it's impossible to track them. They use Bitcoin and other cyber currency that cannot be traced. It's just impossible. Professional hackers know how to work that dark web in such a way that you can never find out who they are.
Yeah. So now, what do you do? I mean, my social security number's out there, my phone numbers, date of birth. Like, if that's all out there, what do I do to protect myself?
If you have someone's social security number, date of birth, things like that, address, you can apply for loans. You can apply for all these things.
Yeah.
So what do you do to protect yourself?
Well, the first step, Equifax did set up a website where you can put in your information. It's called EquifaxSecurity2017.com, and you can check to see if you've been affected. Now, that being said, even if it says that you aren't affected, you should probably assume that you are.
Yeah, be paranoid. And you know something? Sorry to say, you need to be paranoid for the rest of your life. And I wouldn't trust Equifax, and I wouldn't trust any of these other reporting agencies. The others most likely could have been hacked also. People take this hacking too lightly, and even the person who ran the security for Equifax was not trained in cybersecurity. So that they didn't really, in my opinion, take it very seriously.
Yeah. Now, if we're going to assume that we've been affected by this hack, well, what do we do about it? It's a couple things. You can enroll in a credit monitoring service. Now, Equifax does provide you with 1 year of service free with their Trusted ID credit monitoring app. What Jim likes to use is Complete ID. Tell us about that.
Well, let's go back to, you really want to trust Equifax with anything? I'm not going to trust them with anything. Personally, I hope they go out of business. Let's be blunt. They're going to affect you for the rest of your life, for the rest of your kid's life.
Oh, but they gave you a free year of service.
One free year. Yeah, well, for the rest of your life, you're going to have something like Complete ID. Now, I'm a member of Costco. I have Complete ID. It monitors any type of attempts to get credit reporting. That's how I knew someone was pulling my credit history and applying for accounts at other locations, because I had the Complete ID from Costco. And if you get it from Costco through, Complete ID through Costco, you get a discount. But you're going to have to do this the rest of your life. Yeah. I'm sorry to say, this will affect the rest of your life. This is why it's so different than just you losing your password and your login from Yahoo.
Yeah, I can change those.
Yeah, I can change those. Who cares? It's just your password.
Can I change my Social Security? It takes a lot, doesn't it?
Actually, you can. You have to prove you've been a victim of cybersecurity, and they offered it to me. I'm sorry, a victim of cybersecurity. A victim of hacking. And they offered it to me a number of years ago, but being former military and all, and that's how they identify me, I was kind of reluctant to change my Social Security number.
Yeah.
So I've learned how to defend myself the best I can.
Yeah. So here's kind of like a multi-step process, but you want to ask for a freeze on credit reporting.
Right. And you know what they'll do is they'll give you a PIN. They'll assign you a PIN number. You want to hold on to that PIN because what it means is if you got a freeze, no one can, they go out and they try to get a loan to get or try to get a cell phone, let's say, and they check your credit report. Your credit report is supposedly what they claim, and it should be that way. They cannot access it, so they're not going to issue credit under your name, or they shouldn't issue credit under your name.
And what do I need to do, like if I need to get a car loan or something?
Well, you need to call up ahead of time and open up your credit report so when they call in, they get it, they can see it, and then of course once you get that car loan, then you go in and you lock it down again.
Yep.
And you got to do it all three credit. So you're going to have three different PIN codes that you got to keep track of.
Yeah. So basically, freeze it. If I need something, unfreeze it, and then freeze it again.
Right. And that's what you're going to have to do for the rest of your life.
Yeah. And like really, it's like paying very close attention to these credit monitoring services. You got to look at your bank statements, credit card statements, see if any other loans have been taken out in your name. What else can you check?
Well, I know when you're checking your credit card statement, sometimes you want to look for the $1 charge. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes the guys and women are the people who get a hold of your information, even your credit card information. Sometimes what they'll do is they'll test the credit card to see if it's legitimate, and they'll charge something small, $5, $10, even $1. And if it goes through, then they'll hammer your credit card. But you need to watch that very closely, your credit card statements. You also need to monitor your bank statements very closely. Another thing you need to do when it comes, if you have multiple accounts, like some people have these draft over protection, end that. Because if they get a hold of one account, they can drain all your accounts. So you want to end any type of connections. In fact, put your savings in one bank and put your checking in another bank. At least it makes it harder for hackers to get your money. And guess what? Someone hacks your bank account, you know something? Bank's not going to give you your money in most cases. Now, maybe they'll change that in the future because of this hack. But, you got $50,000 in a bank, and someone hacks your account and steals that $50,000, just kiss it goodbye. And so you need to spread out the funds. Between different bank accounts and between different banks.
And it's also a good opportunity to actually talk to your bank and see like what they offer in that regards. Like I belong to a credit union who does offer some degree of protection in the case of credit card fraud. So check with your bank, and if your bank doesn't offer you any protection, find a better bank.
Well, the credit cards, I know, generally speaking, will give you protection on that. And of course, the poor company, that the credit card company said the account was good, and they charge $500, and you find out later it's not good. It's that local company that has to eat the $500. So that's the way it is with bank accounts. But I don't think they give you protection. At least I have not seen it on your bank accounts, your actual bank accounts. So that's why you need to divide it up and put it in different banks, put it in different accounts.
Yeah. And then there's another step that's kind of like unconventional, but you really ought to check like your family members.
Yeah. Well, with that complete ID, and by the way, we do not get a penny for saying that's a good program. There's others out there that are just as good, but I found that to be cost effective, that complete ID product. But you can also, under complete ID, you can add your children, you can add other family members under that. You're going to have to do this the rest of your life.
Yeah. And if you've been affected, be vigilant with your children, other family members that you may have like co-signed a loan for. It's like your information's compromised, their information's compromised.
Yeah, and I know of a person, an adult, only went to get a loan to get a house and found a ton of accounts that were open when he was a minor and didn't even know about it.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, look, We are experts in the area of cybersecurity. Like, we deal with this every day.
Well, I always say not an expert.
Oh.
Professionals.
We're professionals.
Professionals. The highest certification. We know networks inside and out. We've seen a lot of this fraud. We've seen a lot of this, activity and things like that. But go ahead.
Yeah. So, listen, like, we can really take this giant headache of securing your data, take it out of your hands. We'll manage it. We can do it a lot of different ways. Like, the first is creating security policies and procedures. It's like creating the roadmap, the architecture for your business to be secure and to protect your information from getting out there.
And what I've noticed also on this is, it really does start with policies and procedures.
Yeah.
And the reason why we say that is, a lot of times I hear people say, "Oh, I'm completely secure, cyber secure in my business. I don't need anything else because we have a firewall." Well, that's not just having a firewall is not cybersecurity. People can get around firewalls. Firewalls aren't necessarily designed right, or you can not necessarily have a good firewall. So when you as let's say if you're an IT guy and you just say, "Oh, I'll just throw a firewall on that network and that'll solve the problem." Well, what you're doing is it's the tail wagging the dog. You really have to have the security policies and procedures first. You got to have the plan first. And then you dictate what type of firewall and how it should be programmed, things like that.
Yeah. The next thing you want to look at is business continuity and disaster recovery. Because oftentimes, like, either you get hacked or you have some kind of disaster and your equipment is compromised. How does your business run without your information? Like, can we run our business without having our database?
Well, it's 60%, I heard, 60 might be more, of people who lose their database go out of business within a year.
Wow.
And, I was in that hurricane, the first hurricane. Was it Harvey?
Harvey.
I was out in Austin. I'm often in Austin. I don't know why, but often in Austin. And I was there for that hurricane. It didn't hit Austin as hard as it did Houston. But the thing on my mind was when I saw the flooding in Houston, how many servers are underwater?
Yeah.
And completely useless. How many small businesses are going out of business because they didn't have a disaster recovery plan, didn't have a business continuity. And what are we talking about? In some cases, we're talking about backups and proper backups. A lady came in my office a while back, I would say within the last year, and she described that she had a problem on her network and it was ransomware. And I said, well, okay, well, you had to do this, this, and this to get rid of ransomware, then reload your backup. And she said, oh, our backup is encrypted also. And I said, well, why? She goes, because it was attached. And I said, well, you should always have at least more than one copy. One is none, two is one when it comes to backups. And you should always have more than just one copy, and it should be air-gapped. In other words, it's not attached to your network, and it should be separate. But there's a lot of little things like that if you're not paying attention, in other words, firewall isn't going to stop a ransomware. It isn't going to do it. Ransomware will get right through firewall, and there's nothing a firewall can do to stop it.
You know what else a firewall won't stop? An actual fire.
Yeah, that's true.
Here in California, we get earthquake, fire. Like, it happens a lot. And if you lose that equipment, you lose that backup. How do you get back up and running? Well, we got solutions that can really get you up and running, like, even if your whole building goes down.
Yeah, that's true. But it has to be something that's planned before something happens. We can work with people after it happened. In some cases, we can help you, and we've done that in the past. But you really have to have a plan. You have to think these things through. What happens if my building burns down? What happens if there's a flood? And yes, it happened to us. About a year ago, the neighbors had a broken pipe, and it flooded our complete office. I would say with about 2 inches of water.
Oh, yep.
It was flowing out our front door.
Our server was like sitting in a couple inches of water, which is fun.
Yeah. Well, actually, it was off the ground, but we had backups that were not present at our location, and we continued to function.
Yeah. Training is critical. Like you can have the best laid plan, you can have all the technology that'll get you back up and running in case of hack, in case of natural disaster. If your employees are not properly trained, it won't make a difference.
Absolutely. They have really easily hacked passwords, or they click on things that they should not have. And if you can get some basic training, how to recognize, um, you know, the, you get a notice from your bank that says click here, and we can take care of the problem. I remember this lady talking, a salesperson was talking to me, and I was telling her, we were just chit-chatting for a little bit, because I do appreciate salespeople. I know they work hard. And I noticed the lady was talking to me about some sort of stock item, and I said, well, we sell a lot of our products on Amazon. And she started talking about Amazon, and she said, oh, I just got an email from Amazon that said my system was compromised.
Oh,
I
no.
need to click here. I need to click here. And I said, well, ma'am, that's probably not from Amazon. And what you need to do is shut down your computer completely, or go to another computer, log into Amazon, and change your password. And she goes, well, it's very convenient. I already clicked on it, and there's the Amazon logo and everything else.
Mm-mm.
And she said, well, I have to go. And I said, don't put your password in there. Whatever you do, don't do that. And she said, well, I got to go. I'm positive it's Amazon. So people need to be trained in this area. Employees need to be trained what to click on, what not to click on. So not only do you have policies and procedures to help you with disaster recovery, how about if an employee actually erases a whole file? Where are you going to get it from if you don't have serious professional backups?
And look, we can do the training. Like we offer lunch and learns. We can come to your business and actually sit down with everybody for an hour and like go over like all the policies that like we create with you. So like we really are committed that like your information is secure, that your business is up and running, and that like in the event that something horrible happens, like you'll be ready and your employees will be ready to deal with it.
And you know something, I don't know how long we're going to have this lunch and learn available for free. But employee training lunch and learn will come out to your facility. As of right now, we're doing it for free.
Did you wait? How much does it cost?
It's free.
Free?
You
What?
just have to provide the employees and a room so we can do a presentation, and we'll train your employees what not to click on, what not to do on the internet. We'll also help them on what not to do at their home, and things they need to do to protect themselves from hacking, and protect you also. Be responsible for what the opportunities that you have given them and the trust you've put in them.
Yeah. So that's who we are. And listen, like we really appreciate the time that you've spent with us on this. Like I know this is an important topic, and I know that your information security is vital. So thank you for listening to us. Visit our website, www.blackstonecybersecurity.com. Visit www.enova.us. We're a full-service IT company. We do everything: Cisco, Microsoft, cabling, VoIP, cybersecurity consulting.
Yes, I've been doing it for, obviously, as I said before, for many decades.
Yeah.
And so that's should speak volumes of our credibility, and also that we work with a lot of companies. As I said, 6,000 installations outside of California
Mm-hmm.
in these many years, and we've done just as many probably inside.
Yeah. So thank you for your time, and we look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you.